Let's dive right into today's explainer, where we're looking at a massive historical puzzle. Why is it that history's greatest military powers have repeatedly marched east, expecting quick, easy victories, only to be swallowed completely whole by the landscape itself? Picture it, thousands of kilometers of open plains, frozen rivers, and just seemingly endless, unforgiving roads. For centuries, invading armies have looked at this terrain and thought, hey, we can master this with superior tactics and sheer numbers. But time and time again, the landscape has proven to be the ultimate trap.
So what actually makes this specific terrain one of the hardest places on Earth to invade? It's a fascinating question. We're going to see how the landscape, far more than just massive armies or brutal winter weather, became an absolutely impenetrable shield. You see, geography didn't just host the historical battles of the past. Geography actively fought back.
To really wrap our heads around this trap, we first got to grasp the sheer, mind-boggling immensity of the landmass. We are talking about territories stretching all the way from European Russia, across the massive Ural Mountains, and deep into the vastness of Siberia. This isn't just empty space either. It's this unforgiving expanse of dense forests, wide rivers, and flat plains that acts like a giant sponge. It literally absorbs invading forces, weaponizing the physical distance against them.
Just think about this number for a second. 11. 11 time zones. For any invading force, controlling territory becomes exponentially harder with every single kilometer they advance. The further an army pushes in, the more stretched, isolated, and vulnerable its forces get. The physical size of the map inevitably turns any kind of rapid invasion plan into a grinding, absolute logistical nightmare.
When you look at the raw metrics, over 17 million square kilometers of land area, 45% of it blanketed in dense forest, plus these extreme, constantly shifting climate zones, it becomes crystal clear. Invaders aren't just fighting an opposing military force, they're fighting the very dimensions of the Earth itself. These incredible natural barriers, combined with a really uneven population distribution, force armies to stretch their supply lines right to the breaking point.
And this isn't exactly a new problem. Going all the way back to the Mongol era, maintaining massive geographic buffers has been a central pillar of survival. Because there are so few natural borders like oceans or impassable mountain ranges on those highly vulnerable western plains, creating massive buffer zones became a baked-in strategy for all the empires that followed. They explicitly needed vast amounts of space just to blunt incoming attacks from the west.
Let's look at a classic example. 1812. Napoleon marches his massive French forces east, completely expecting a rapid, decisive win. He thought he'd swiftly capture Moscow and be done with it. But the brutal reality? A catastrophic collapse, driven by disease, severe supply shortages, and endless distance. The map simply swallowed his grand army whole, wearing them down kilometer by kilometer.
You know, there's this hugely popular myth that General Winter was the primary force that broke the French army. But honestly, the invisible enemy was immense distance. Geography defeated those armies long before the first snowflakes even hit the ground. The supply chain was entirely shattered by the sheer, unforgiving length of the road, leaving soldiers stranded without even the most basic resources.
Fast forward a bit to 1941, Operation Barbarossa. Nazi Germany launches a massive, mechanized invasion aiming to finally conquer the map. They drove modern tanks, aircraft, and mechanized infantry straight at Leningrad, Moscow, and Stalingrad. The prevailing military assumption at the time was, well, modern machines and motors can finally overcome this stubborn geography.
And at first, in June, that mechanized blitzkrieg was blindingly fast. But then October hit, bringing the infamous Rasputitsa, the mud season, which completely stalled those heavy German tanks. By December, the offensive didn't just suffer a setback, it was a complete and total logistical collapse. Those cutting-edge war machines quite literally sank into the earth, unable to move forward or backward.
Faced with this onslaught, the Soviet defense relied on a brutal but incredibly effective three-step playbook. First, a scorched earth retreat, systematically burning infrastructure and crops to deny the enemy any resources. Second, and this is kind of miraculous, they relocated entire manufacturing factories safely east of the Ural Mountains. They literally packed up heavy industry onto trains. And third, they traded all that massive space for time, just absorbing the enemy's momentum until it simply ran out of gas.
When you break it down, the true causes of defeat were stunningly practical. Take incompatible railway gauges, for example. European trains ran on narrower tracks than Russian ones, meaning supply trains physically could not move forward without painstakingly transferring cargo by hand. Add in totally stretched fuel lines, severe food shortages, and extreme distance, and you realize logistics dictate military success way more than freezing temperatures ever could. Exhaustion and distance, those were the real generals calling the shots.
Now this brings us to a super fascinating question for today. In our modern era of drones, spy satellites, precision-guided weapons, and cyber warfare, has advanced technology finally conquered the landscape, or does physical geography still firmly dictate the rules of engagement?
Looking impartially at modern defense strategies, the map remains incredibly relevant. From heavily fortified Arctic outposts to deep, layered air defense zones, physical distance still provides absolutely crucial reaction time against modern threats. Sure, nuclear deterrence and cyber capabilities have fundamentally changed how conflicts work, but the map itself remains a vital, active participant in any defensive posture.
And because the population is still massively concentrated in European Russia to the west, those huge, relatively empty spaces in Siberia and the Far East, they continue to act as a formidable, built-in strategic cushion. It's a natural buffer zone that didn't just magically disappear with the invention of the internet or advanced aerospace tech.
It's wild when you think about it, because despite all our incredible technological leaps since the 1940s, modern armies still require absolutely massive logistics. High-tech forces desperately need specialized fuel, advanced munitions, and heavy replacement parts, all of which still have to cross thousands of kilometers of Earth. Moving that much military supply across this specific terrain is just as much of a logistical nightmare today as it was a century ago.
Which brings us to the ultimate question for this explainer. As warfare rapidly shifts toward artificial intelligence, advanced unmanned systems, and space-based technologies, can geography ever truly be conquered by human engineering?
Because history shows us time and time again that maps can be just as powerful as armies. Geography has absorbed enormous military pressure, acting as an impenetrable line of defense for centuries. But as warfare continues to evolve and our weapons increasingly look to the stars, we really have to ask, will the physical map always have the final say, or is the Earth's ultimate shield finally starting to crack?
Thanks for watching World Decoded. Make sure to like and share, subscribe, and stay curious.